Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 15th, 4 p.m. hybrid meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates in the Mary Pat Conference Room. Mr. Clerk, would you do the honors of the opening statement?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates will be conducted both in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at JMARCZEAK@capecod.gov, call 508-375-6646, or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and that information is also available on the website in the meeting center. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the opening ceremonies. We'll start with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving in our country in the armed forces. Thank you. Now, those who can't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. With that, Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes. Delegate Frederickson,
Here.
Delegate Frizel,
Here.
Delegate Fuller,
Here.
Delegate Gallagher,
Here.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Here.
Delegate Green,
Here.
Delegate Harder,
Here.
Delegate Killian,
Here.
Delegate O'Malley,
Here.
Speaker Omen.
Here.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Here.
Delegate Ty,
Here.
Delegate Warner,
Here.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, you have a quorum with 14 members representing 97.12% of the county's population.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the journal and minutes. I'm going to do these separately. First of all, can I get a motion to approve the Journal of the Assembly of Delegates special meeting on September 24th?
So move.
Do I have a second? Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel,
Abstain.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Speaker Omen.
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
That is 14 yeses representing 97.12% of the.
Point of order, I abstained.
Oh, you did? Oh,
I
sorry
abstained.
about that.
I wasn't present.
All right, let me fix that. So that's 13 now at 92.61. Thank you, Delegate Frizel. Too fast.
Okay, let's move on to 6B, the Assembly of Delegates, the regular meeting on October 1st, 2025. Do I have a motion, please?
So move.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
All right. Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Speaker Omen.
Yes.
Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty, Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo. And again, the Chatham seat is vacant. That is 14 at 97.12%.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Adoption of the order of business. Can I get a motion to adopt the order of business for today?
So moved.
Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Speaker Omen.
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty.
Yes.
Delegate Warner.
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Volume's very low, but I did hear that. That is
Yes.
13 or 1497.12%.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now, on to the election of a new Speaker of the Assembly of Delegates. I want everyone to know, I know that everyone should know this anyway, but it is one person, one vote here. There's no percentages involved, so we need a majority vote regardless of how many people are here, okay? So on the nominations are now in order for the Speaker. Delegate O'Malley.
Mr. Speaker, I would nominate a delegate from Yarmouth, Susan Warner, as our next speaker.
Thank you. Further nominations, please. Seeing none, I will close the I'm
I
sorry.
move that we close nominations.
Oh, thank you. Nominations are now closed. We'll now proceed to call a roll call vote for the election of Speaker. The clerk will call the roll, and each member will state their name and of the candidate when called. Mr. Clerk.
Delegate Frederickson,
Absolutely.
Delegate Frizel,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate
Yes.
Green, Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes, indeed.
Speaker
I
Pro
said
Tem
yes.
Omen. Oh, sorry. Delegate Green is a yes, and Deputy Speaker, or no, Speaker Pro Tem at this point. And Assembly Dean Omen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty. Delegate Warner,
Do I vote? Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
A big yes.
All right, that's 14, and I don't know if you guys know this is the one place election of officers where it's the majority of the towns and not percentage. So that's 14 of you, which is a majority. So
Now, please, can I have a motion for a brief recess to reset the room now that we've elected a new Speaker?
Second.
Mr. Clerk.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Dean Omen.
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Speaker Warner,
Yes.
and Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
All right.
Something happened. I can't hear you.
this way and electing me in the speaker's position. I promise that I will do right by the community and by the the delegation. I've been encouraged in recent weeks to see that there have been some really collaborative efforts that have happened that makes me happy anyway. And I think that we're looking at the right kind of collaboration among each other to be able to move on the things that we really want to do for our communities and for the region. And I'm reminded by Speaker Princey, who said basically that being the speaker was try to make everybody's voice heard and make certain that the meetings are run efficient, effective, and that the people who tune in to watch them understand what's going on at the time that they're tuned in. And I thought that was pretty good, a pretty good assessment of the overarching responsibilities. And I hope going forward that we can continue to respect each other and each other's opinions and recognize that there are times where we will have to make a compromise on the points of view that each of us might have. And but I've always been quite pleasantly surprised by the manner in which we've arrived at those decisions over the last 5 years that I've been here, and felt really good about what ultimately happened, whether I was for it or against it in the beginning, at the end, or when the vote was taken. So I know that I will be looking to have some help from all of you. And one thing I did want to disclose was that I will be in person, I will be online for a couple of meetings in December, but I will actually not be in the room. And John Oman, Delegate Oman and Delegate Killian have offered to do whatever is necessary to do that. I think that this has kind of made us also need to look at how that's set up, because right now it's not, we need to look at it. And I think it's an important thing to do, but thank you to both of them for being willing to do that. I really am very honored. So thank you for this this privilege, and know that you can always approach me, whether I agree with you or not. That doesn't matter. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you going forward. So so thank you. Okay, so we get started.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion to go into committee of the whole to consider communications under items under items 9 and 10?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Now I need a motion, right? Oh,
Madam Speaker, Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Assembly Dean Omen,
Yes.
Chatham seat is vacant, Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Speaker Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, that's 14, representing 97.12%.
This will take me a few minutes to get it down. Are there any communications from members of the public or officials? This would be the place. Okay. No, we'll then move on to, are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Oh, no, that's my, that's my cue. Communication from regional commissioners, administrator, and directors.
Good afternoon. Madam Speaker, it's my pleasure to be the first civilian to welcome you to your post. Congratulations. And on behalf of the administration, I know that if Michael were here, he would be as enthusiastic as I am at the prospect of working with you on the county's business. So we appreciate the working relationship we have already with you and the Assembly, and are sure that that will continue. Thank you. On Last Wednesday, on the 8th of October, the Board of Regional Commissioners held a brief business meeting virtually. There were no agenda items that were discussed. They simply moved the consent agenda, various items which I could read to you, but I think would prolong this meeting if I did. Are there questions you have for me at this time? Otherwise, I'll give way to the Health Director.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So last time you were here, you mentioned that nothing has been impacted by the government shutdown. I'm just going to ask whether that continues to be the case.
Yes, to my knowledge, there's been no impacts on county operations resulting from the federal government shutdown. Nothing's come to our attention as of yet. Thank you.
I think we're going to get Jay Gardner, the Director of Health and Environment, is going to give us an update on the Department of Health and Environment and what's going on there.
Good afternoon, and I'll be the second. Congratulations, Madam Chairman. Yarmouth holds a special place for me as I spent 2 years as the Director of Health in Yarmouth, so I hold an affinity for that. So, but congratulations, and it's wonderful to be able to be here today. I don't get to see you as often as I would like, but I would say this: I've passed my 6-month mark now with the county. So I am no longer the new guy, and if there was any honeymoon, that is over. And bring on the tough questions, because quite frankly, we have a staff that you can all be very proud of, and they're working hard, they're loyal, they're dedicated, but they're consummate professionals. The 2 of them are here, and I want to really allow most of the time. And I think after talking to Owen, that it was really about the lab, and we're really going to focus on the lab, PFAS, and the support. And when I first came here, you all were deliberating budgets, right? You were being very careful on, and I have the paperwork and the positions, and I was very impressed with how you were looking at and the questions that were being asked about the positions, right? The deputy lab director, right, and the chemist and the half-time biology. And all of you ask very important questions because you spend money like it's your own. It's austere. You want to make sure there's a return on investment here. Well, I can tell you through July and August, we were holding interviews because of your support. We were holding interviews. One of the staff members, but you're going to hear more about staff that have been hired, and we are scaling. And that's a sign of success. We are taking on more, and we're being able to deliver more in each of your communities. And really, one of the things that not we struggle with, but we're very attentive to, is to make sure that each of the residents, each of the communities, and the community leaders understand the benefit that the county delivers. You know, in public health, and the county shares this concern also, is many of our services are hidden in plain view, right? They're there, and it's just not understood. So we make sure we fly the flag as often as we can in making sure that individuals understand that added value, that the county is here to support in any way that we can, and the county does that in a number of different ways. Whether it's, and I'm gonna tick through some of them: the nursing division, emergency preparedness, our shared services, Mass TC. And all of those things we have to continually, because, you know, it's like anything else in marketing and public health. No one's going to do that for you. You want to be able to, the measure of our success, you know, is to make sure that we educate and engage the community, the residents in each of the 15 communities here. The health department, and there's no ego, it is the largest, right, department here at the county. It's the cornerstone, when you look at it, of the services that are being delivered. The message I use, that every successful entity is built on a foundation of good health. This assembly, the county, personally, our schools, without good health, mental health, emotional health, oral health, spiritual health, That's how we thrive. And that's the building block. And some of you I saw at the One Cape Summit. It's the second one I've been to. This goes back now. I guess it's been several weeks, and and consistently and rightfully so, they're talking about water quality and housing. Those are in fact public health issues when we look at those. The underpinning of that is public health, right? So when I look at that, I say, I've looked and I actually talked to some of my colleagues to say, how can we insert more that One Cape Summit? Because that brings together so many leaders. Many of you were there. We want to make sure that public health has a prominent role in that, and not just the social determinants of the housing and things of that nature, but there's a strong transference of the health of our community. So in our county, I should say. So we look to scale our reach and inform and engage. That's the measure. If I could just go to walk through a few of them. I've asked each of them. When I was out, we presented to the commissioners, and we actually rolled through each of the division heads, because quite frankly, a lot of the work that gets done in these divisions, I do not feel like I take credit. I have direct reports, but consummate professionals and you know many of them, Wendy Judge, Chip Riley, all of that group, Dan White that's here with us, they do the work. I'm in the fortunate position of being able to communicate the work that they do. But in efforts of time, I'm going to roll through some of the highlights, and so that the individuals listening at home and you can understand, going back to your communities, some of the highlights that we have in our programs. But the vast majority of the time, I'd like the lab and our new lab director, assistant, or deputy director, says, to introduce and talk to you a little bit about that. So just quickly in the nursing division, and there's been a lot of disruption nationally and locally on that, is COVID and seasonal influenza, and where are we with that? And that creates a lot of concern, right, amongst our demographics, and rightfully so. Well, on the 27th, from 12:30 to 3:30, we'll be having a clinic of October, 27th of October, 12:30 to 3:30. There's going to be a clinic here at the county, all right? It's going to be open to the public as well as employees. There'll be COVID-19 shots, Pfizer shots will be available for ages 12 and over, and the flu vaccine will be here, both the regular and the high dose for over 65. That's going to be available. You can sign up on the website. It's available now. Or you can schedule any Tuesday or Thursday right on our website, those are available. In addition to being here, there are 35 other sites. That's the reach that our nursing division has in the county. 35 others across the Cape in the month of October. Those are at food pantries, Gosnell Treatment Center, the 4 Cs, the colleges, the college. So far and wide, making sure that there's a strong presence, and if individuals want to get a vaccine, those are available. But I would encourage those listening at home to please jump onto our website and look at that information and sign up. We've also partnered with a lot of the work that we do. We build a bridge to other agencies, and the VNA is certainly one of them. We have a A1C diabetic A1C testing program in collaboration with the VNA. Very innovative. We have the equipment, it's a partnership of work that we're doing, and there's diabetic educational events. It's a series that's going on. The event is being offered in each of your communities, right across the Cape, the VNA and the county, and that's a strong partnership that's going on now. It measures your blood sugar level over the previous 3 months, and it's an indicator for prediabetes and diabetes. Wendy, they send me pages of information. So listen, I do, because they're so passionate about the work that they do. But just to distill it down to a few other things, we follow the foodborne illness cases, as you probably well know. But one of the things that it was important, because it's an issue that's hard to look at the pathology of it. It's hoarding. And a new program is kicked off in that Buried in Treasures. I really should say it's been probably reinvigorated, because I think it's been out there for a bit. But a 16-week program is being started, and it's being started with the nursing division, and they're going out and doing the Buried Treasure. That's a very difficult psychological concern, but it's real, and it's very prominent in my time on the Cape in Yarmouth, I saw those pieces, and I don't even know how big that iceberg is, but we saw those, and those are very tragic, not easily solved. From the police department to social service agencies, faith-based organizations and beyond, that takes a collaborative effort. But please know that that's being addressed. Emergency preparedness. Chip Riley, he was busy starting last Wednesday, right? The storm was about to roll through. It didn't materialize in the way that, thankfully, but that was also, he uses that as a test, as the summer storms can be coming, right? He uses that as an opportunity to test those relationships, making sure those phone numbers and the individuals are there. They didn't have to activate the MAC, but it was being stepped up, and he was here on Sunday, and the storm, and as it turned out, like I say, fortunately, I think at the high point, I asked him over the weekend, I think there was 1,000 people. You know, a tree was down maybe, and a small isolated, but back up. It didn't pass the threshold of having to open that up. But know that the infrastructure is there and well in place. They recently just posted for a new health planner and medical reserve corps. The MRC program. As you know, we had 2 part-time individuals. They have since left. Well, one individual is going to be coming in to do that. And that's the volunteers. The volunteers from all of your communities play an important role in so many different public health initiatives that happen. And we want to make sure it's difficult to keep volunteers engaged. That is posted now, and hopefully we're going to be hiring someone soon. But we have brought on Andrew Platt. Some of you may remember Andrew Platt. He's a return. He came back, went off and did some private work as a consultant. He's back, and he's a safety lab officer. So he's looking at all the safety parts within the lab. Looking at that, it's a full hazards materials inventory and strengthening the chemical safety and coordination in our lab. And perhaps Dan will talk a little bit about that. And one thing that Chip did want you to know, and I hope you can make a note of this, on the 24th, there'll be a regional tabletop exercise right here in this room. And that's about the planning of all the Cape communities, bringing together, right, those communications. So on the 24th of this month, there'll be a tabletop exercise from our emergency preparedness program here on the county. Really, probably the one that touches your municipalities the most is our PHE, our Public Excellence Grant. This is where we're helping to strengthen the public health programs within each of your communities. They're different. The dollars aren't enough to be able to handle the influx of all the varied concerns that come in public health. Well, the county plays a role in the Public Health Excellence Grant, hardwires to each of the agents. And sometimes it's only a 0.5 FTE. There's some, actually, Yarmouth has yet to backfill the position when I left in February. I serve in that role. I help in that. That's one of those things. I don't take that as a pat on the back, just to simply say that's what the county allows us to do. And there's other communities, and I won't mention, but the other communities that are having difficulty in that, and we go back in to help them. And that's the role. I'd go back to this to say, like the commissioners, you set the priorities. That becomes our responsibility. When you tell us what we're going to be doing, then we move forward and we take that serious. Those are our responsibilities to do. And the Public Health Excellence Grant allows us to do that. And then there's a lot of educational things that happen. This gives us a lot of reach. We do the TikTok program. Maybe you've seen that. The tick at the trailheads and educate the libraries, tick awareness and kits and things of that nature. We reach a lot of individuals in a significant way in that, and it prompts a lot of questions. When we come out and put out a tent and at different fairs and events and food pantries, or it might even be a farmer's market, people come up and talk. They want to know a little bit about that. So that gives us a good opportunity in that. I do want to just go through, because I want to be attentive to time. Some of you were there out on Mass TC, Brian's program. Brian has been here. He really can have a whole, program and presentation of its own. But on the 26th of September, maybe some of you, there was a ribbon cutting that happened. And that is significant. That brings the Mass TC, and we introduced it, it's the Clean Water Center now. The Gates Foundation, almost $3 million was put in to innovative, sanitary programs, septic systems. This is a global initiative now. We're going to be certified. Here we are on Barnstable, Cape Cod, and the Gates Foundation can go anywhere, and they came here. And this puts us on a global stage now. And really, we'll be certifying and working in a business capacity to certify these startups for the septic systems. And we're no longer just a Cape Cod, leader. We're a global leader in that. Brian, it's really not even doing him justice in the Sarah, the work that they do out there. But there was a ribbon cutting, and I would encourage you, if there's a time, to bring them back and let them talk. The Aqua Fund, I didn't even talk about that. That is doing tremendous work. And with the sewer connections and the work that's going on, that's a lifeline for a lot of individuals, the Aqua Fund program. So that program is going exceedingly well. I do want to hand it over to our lab director and I'll let him introduce our new deputy lab director. And they are a victim of success. Because of your ability and your foresight and your vision and your wisdom to say, we're going to invest and there's going to be a return on investment. There's some significant things that are going on here. The ARPA dollars that you were willing to approve, the positions that you were willing to approve, those are now being translated into positions and capacity, and it's scaling. We are up and to the right in so many different ways. So I'm going to hand this over to them and let them talk about the lab.
Hello, and thanks for letting us speak with you today. I'm Dan White, Laboratory Director for the Barnstable County Water Quality Laboratory. I'm going to give you a little overview on what's new with us in the laboratory. And with me today is Kevin McCarney. He's our new Laboratory Deputy Director. He started about a month ago. We're really super busy. It's been a really good season. Since July 1st, we've taken in over 12,000 samples, 5,000 of which were beach samples that were collected and analyzed by our beach monitoring program. Almost 400 samples for PFAS since July 1st. And we've tested over 550 residential wells for various contaminants. Plus, there's ever increasing amounts of wastewater analysis that are coming in from the Mass Test Center. And for the fourth year in a row, we've offered seasonal cyanotoxin testing on freshwater pond samples to help local health agents determine the extent that cyano blooms could be a danger. In recent years, we've seen an increase of 10% in our samples that we receive. And this year is on track to blow that all out of the water. We're extremely busy, and we're very grateful for that. And we're very grateful for your support in approving the funding for 3 new positions. Kevin's position as the lab deputy director is one of those, and it was one that was strongly recommended by our certification authority, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, during the last biannual audit. So they come in and audit us every 2 years, and they felt we needed to strengthen our data validation procedures to be not just within the analysts themselves and me with some oversight. They want to see somebody who's directly into data analysis and technical support for those analysts, especially with how we're expanding and taking in new work. So that is the role Kevin is filling in, which has taken a lot of some of the load off me, which is great. And he's helping out with oversight and evaluation of the staff. Another position we actually started under ARPA funds is the PFAS chemist. And that, of course, you funded for this next fiscal year out of the regular lab salary budget, but it allowed us to get certified this past February in PFAS analysis. Since then, our the chemist we had originally had in that position, Andrew Barker, has unfortunately left us. But fortunately, we were able to fill it with a new chemist, Emma Peterson, who's really hit the ground running, and with Kevin's help has continued on our PFAS analysis program. Kevin's a pretty experienced PFAS chemist himself. Is a really good find for that. And then the third position, new position, is a part-time bacteriologist. You know, with the increasing number of samples, of course, microbiological samples are part of that. And our bacteriologists needed some reliable and steady help. So we've hired a part-time bacteriologist to come in. We've just filled that with someone who was an analyst who was our summer assistant for us, which was a nice transition that she could step in from that role where she got trained into a permanent role. And with the added bonus of she's helping out at our front desk too, which is also stressed because of the increased sample load. So all of this is kind of synergy and works together nicely. So now our staffing is up to 15 permanent, full and part-time employees. And then in the summer months, we bring in 6 seasonal beach samplers and an additional 4 seasonal laboratory assistants. And I tell you, it's a busy place. We do a lot of work, and I'm very proud to be a part of that. It's a wonderful team of very dedicated professionals. And in addition, the ARPA funds allowed us to purchase a lot of new equipment. We've purchased everything we asked for there. The last 2 pieces, the ICP OES, an inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectrometer. It's a mouthful. That was just installed, and we're underway to get that certified. It's a new method. It's replacing an old technology. It's going to make us more efficient. And also a new Tecta analyzer, which is a automated microbiological analyzer that's going to help us with samples over the weekend and help us in the micro lab as well. That's also under certification. We're out for certification on that. The ARPA funds allowed us to add new bench and cabinet space, install some new workstations, update our old computers, and we've been using it to add improvements and modifications to our laboratory information management system, which is the software that runs the laboratory. Everything from login through reporting and even invoicing. All of these are to make the lab more efficient, to increase our capabilities and allow us to just do more. But, you know, all of it's possible because of the funds that you all have approved, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for that. And, you know, let you know, please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or feedback you'd like to understand. So I'll take any questions if you have them.
Yep. Dr. O'Malley, Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you. I'm going to address this to Mr. White. During the budget season last year, I gave you kind of a hard time on some of the numbers and projections. We had numbers of samples coming in that didn't begin to justify expenses, and I wish I had gone back and reviewed that before we met today. But I remember through our discussions, you were able to point to evidence that the last year had been kind of a particularly one-off bad year, low sample numbers, and you had a number of reasons, including the Gates money, that indicated a real likelihood that those sample volumes were going to go up. I need some refreshing of my memory specifically on that, but I'm wondering how the volumes have done since that time.
So specifically, I believe we were talking about TOC analysis, total organic carbon for the
Exactly.
new TOC analyzer we were looking at purchasing.
Right.
And that had fallen off. It's just one of the many analysis we do. So total number of samples we took in, the volume of samples we took in last year was higher than ever. I mean, it was over 20,000 samples the whole year. But TOC did fall off just because of a lag in the projects that the Mass Test Center, our main customer for that, even though there are some other smaller wastewater interests that we do TOC for. Since then, there hasn't been another major TOC project come up. We get those in a few at a time. I'm going to say probably since we spoke, we've gotten maybe a dozen in. But I know their Mass Test Center is talking about another project that would mean sampling TOCs, several times a week. So it's a good capability for us to keep. It's not an instrument that you have to keep running. It's kind of the thing you can start back up when you need to, when you have samples. So it's not something that's costing us money to keep that certification. We are looking at purchasing a new TOC analyzer because the old one it's running on, I believe it's XP because the software is so old and out of date. But it's the kind of instrument that obviously lasts. This one we have now is 15, 20 years old. So it's hard for me to predict exactly what we'll see with TOC in the future. But we have that capability, and it's a pretty standard wastewater analysis.
One of the issues that we also faced around that was the charge imposed by the manufacturer or supplier for maintenance and ongoing support. And I know you were looking into working out an alternate arrangement on that.
Well,
basically, are we staying ahead? Or are we making anything on that analyzer?
Well, we're not going to take the maintenance program. So pieces of equipment that we use a lot, like the LCMS that we use for PFAS analysis, that we have to keep under service contract to have a technician come out from the manufacturer to do maintenance, when the instrument breaks down, come out and fix it right away. But for something like the TOC analyzer, unless we're starting to see large sample volumes like we did a few years ago, there's no point in having a service contract. We can do all the maintenance we need ourselves. So that part of it, we're not going ahead with unless we start seeing TOC come in large numbers. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Delegate Freisel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So if I'm not mistaken, during the budget season, we went over the lab rates, and I thought we had recently adjusted lab rates. Right, thank you. So have you seen any impact, either positive or negative, on volume and revenues as a result of that?
Revenues have gone up pretty dramatically. I don't have the numbers in front of me to speak right now, but I know our revenues are higher than they've ever been. We put in place those price increases in July of 24, so it's been a little over a year. And eventually we'll have to look at it again down the road. We'll have to do an assessment and see where we are. Prices, of course, cost of consumables and electricity and everything else is going up. So we'll have to revisit those eventually. But for right now, we're doing very well with revenue.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad to see you have a team in place that's doing all this, and your samples are up on all the cases. Last year when we talked to you, PFAS was a brand new machine, and you were looking to be able to somehow get the word out that we had a very rare ability to do PFAS, and the revenue hadn't even started at that point. And we were really concerned about that. We got the play, we got it. We have a rare opportunity to preserve the general public in Massachusetts and beyond. How has that been affected for the last 12 months? And where do you see it going forward? But especially revenue-wise, sample-wise, and therefore the relationship to revenue-wise, because I think that's the really important going into the future is getting a machine like that and using it to its best abilities. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've seen tremendous interest in PFAS. 700 samples have come in since we got certified in mid-February. There's the program that the county, the department put out, the Tetra Tech project, where we're offering free analysis to some residential homeowners. It's a whole project that's been out there that people have signed up for across the Cape. That's bringing in 300 samples alone for PFAS. We've received, I think, about a third of those. I think we've received about 100 of those so far. There's also a lot of interest. Nantucket sends us a tremendous amount of PFAS because they now require PFAS testing for real estate transactions. If you own a well, you have to test for PFAS before you can do any real estate transactions. So we take in quite a bit from them. And I've been reached out to from Martha's Vineyards, from the health agents out there, because they really are getting a lot of concern from their residents. And we take samples in from residents all over the Cape. In addition to that, there's the water companies have compliance testing they have to do every year, depending on which water company it is, how many people they serve, as dictated by the DEP. So yeah, there's no end to the amount of interest there is in PFAS. We see more. I'd say we've probably got close to 100 samples in just last month. It's steadily increased. I can't predict the future, absolutely, but I don't see this as a problem that's going away anytime soon.
We
outsource
things.
We outsource some of them, yeah. Previously.
Previously, that capacity was being outsourced. Now that's all being done internally. Change the paradigm completely.
But forgive me, I also want to know the relationship. Like you said, you're giving away free samples to private parties, right, to citizens. But where is the revenue increase coming with the PFAS machine that was very expensive to run and very expensive to man? I want to know what the future is for revenue sources, so we can think about that in budget time, which is coming right up.
That Tetra Tech project was funded by ARPA, so it's not us giving away. So we're getting paid from it from ARPA funds. So that is being paid to the lab.
If I could just follow up a little bit, that's a tremendous question, and our county administrator picked up on that to say the 300 samples, it's actually 270, that Tetra Tech will be the private well testing. Well, within 48 hours, we didn't know how many people would sign up for this. That filled up within 48 hours. We had well over 600 now, right? And then we had to almost cut that off. So the county administrator said, well, perhaps we can reach back to these individuals while we're doing the free, like, well testing and things like that. Obviously, we have a significant margin of individuals who are interested in this and do want testing. So there is the administration is thinking about that to say, can we tap into that to say, what would that price point be? And can we, although it's not, it's not free, they didn't make it inside the program for geographic or, proximity, a number of reasons, because it was geographically distributed across all the communities. But they obviously are interested in being, say, having their water sampled, and what might we be able to do to reach back in that? And what would that marketing look like? The county administrator is already looking at what that would look like.
Thank you. That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Delegate Killian.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the report, gentlemen. Just to follow up on what Delegate Oman was talking about, you said you did about 700 tests so far since February.
For PFAS?
Yes.
Yes, we've taken in 700 samples.
And I assume most of those were from Barnstable County samples.
The majority of those are Barnstable County, yes.
Can you speak generally to the results of those tests that you've done? Are they coming back generally good or bad or?
So we don't see very many that are over the 20 parts per trillion maximum contaminant limit set by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. That's a sort of lifetime exposure. You don't want to be over 20 parts per trillion. These are very, very low numbers. Thinking about, say, for instance, another contaminant like mercury, that MCL is 300 parts per trillion. So that's why we need such an expensive piece of equipment to go down to such low levels. I guess I'm not in the position to really speak authoritatively on the Cape as a whole, but I'd say in my anecdotal experience, very rare to see over 20 parts per trillion. We often see some out there, and how much is concerning to a person. Now, the literature isn't definitive on that yet. I hope that can answer a little bit of what you're asking. The Tetra Tech project too has the idea of helping us get a better handle on where we see PFAS on the Cape. That's part of the idea behind it, is to help us get a handle on that.
But I would assume that in addition to the samples through Tetra Tech, you'll have all kinds of other samples to add to that for a large database that over time will tell us what's really happening.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Delegate O'Malley.
Well, just in follow-up to that question, is it part of our plan to plot where levels are higher? I mean, we ought to start developing some sort of density map or occurrence. So, I mean, that's how we're going to pick up plumes.
Yeah.
Would that be part of our public health responsibility?
I'd have to
Okay,
let
sure.
Jay speak to that.
You're exactly right. Now, we blur addresses. We're not looking at that, but we're going to look at trends, right? The Tetra Tech project is 2% of the wells across the Cape, but it gives us information. And to your point, now we're going to be able to see where some of those problems are, and a longitudinal study to say, okay, listen here, this is where we're going. It gives us data. Right now it's data. We'll be able to say, where are the areas of concern? Where are those things are? That is part of it as well. No question about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Delegate Frazell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I believe you mentioned that there needs to be a testing of a private well for a property transfer. So is the standard that's used for that test this 20 parts per trillion?
That is what Nantucket uses, is the 20 parts per trillion. What their policies are around that, I don't know, but
But what happens if someone flunks that test with respect to the
I
transfer?
I can't speak to that. It's not something in my wheelhouse.
We have any other questions? Oh,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's not really so much as a question, but for people watching, I've been to MassTech twice in the past 2 weeks, and both times were for different reasons, and I learned different things. And it all goes back to what you said at the very beginning of your presentation, which is this public health, housing, water, that is all part of public health, and the alternative systems and everything that is being tested at MassTech are going to be crucial to working on the housing crisis on the Cape. For example, the things that are being tested, urine diversion, all that could be put at an ADU, and therefore you don't have to worry about sewers, things like that. So I'm going to ask that eventually we put this on an agenda and discuss it, because your brilliant Sarah came up with an idea that we could potentially do a pilot program. Since the AmeriCorps houses have to be updated, perhaps we could do a pilot program of some of the alternative testing. Thank you.
do we have any other questions? Nope. Thank, oh,
I just want to say that public health is in the national news right now, right? There's a lot of anxiety and concern and what have you. What I've asked for all of you as leaders in the community and for those listening at home, public health is not a passive endeavor. I'd ask you, get engaged, give us a call, check our dashboard. We have a wealth of information. We have newsletters that are going out. We're here to help. We don't just structure programs in a portfolio, a catalog of services. We want to be responsive and we want to be helpful. So the more engagement and the more communication and cross communication we can have with our residents and you as leaders in each of those, feel free to reach out because we want to be responsive. It's our responsibility to help. So, and thank you for this opportunity. I've taken far longer than probably what you had thought, but I so appreciate this opportunity to be here.
thank you very much, Director Gardner. This has been very informative and we'll probably be seeing you again.
I hope so. I hope so. Look forward to it and congratulations again.
I'll now have a discussion on grant funding for Cape Cod Regional Government Programs, and I turn this over to Assembly Delegate Dean Oman as Chair of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We sent this all out to the Assembly, the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Finance Report. It's a long report. It's very detailed, and I'm willing to discuss it or take questions on it. We were pleasantly surprised at what the administration has done to guarantee and upgrade the delicate matter of how long grants can run, what happens when the grant ends, what happens to the employees when the grant ends. So it's all contained in this. If you have any questions or discussion, I'll be more than happy. And the Finance Committee is all here. So, except I guess we now have an ex officio member of the Finance Committee here. So so if anybody else is interested in the Finance Committee, I'm willing to take your thoughts on it too. So anybody got any question on this report that you all received? Former member, and now Chair Warner.
Thank you. I would like to say that this process was really quite informative, and it seemed in the beginning when we started to look at this that it was going to be quite long and involved. And although it was a little bit lengthy, it became, as a result of questions back and forth and new information that was provided and further questions, it became an exchange with the county staff and with the Finance Committee to look at what we really never looked at before and to come to an understanding of what the grant process is and how it fits into the overall budgeting of the county. I found it particularly fascinating. I found that the way in which people took stuff away from it was really, really encouraging. And that there are things that I learned a great deal about, but that will be mitigated into new programs and stuff that we have that weren't before, that will make it even easier for us as we look at budgets and things to look at how this does integrate in. Am I right? Okay. And so I'm very encouraged by this, and it was a very rewarding process. And I thank both all the people in the county who participated in it, and all of the delegates and the Finance Committee and others who jumped in to bring their interests in, because I think it was a very rewarding process, and I thank the leadership for that. Huh? Oh, Michaela.
Delegate.
Isn't it Michaela? Delegate, oh yeah, delegate.
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I apologize.
Not at all. You can hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you for all this work. I was really impressed with all that you've done, and it's really good to understand more about how the county uses and relies on grants. I just have one question, and it's about the word supplants. And, maybe the grants that come into the county are very different from grants I worked with in my previous career, but we were never able to use grants to supplant. And I'm just questioning that language and what the thought is behind using that. Typically, grants come in to support positions and activities that aren't part of an organization. So that's my question. But thank you for all this work.
Who would that go to? John, Dean Delegate
You
Omen?
can
or
give
would
it
that
to me,
go
but I'm not sure exactly what the technological
I would-
difference is by using the word supplant.
Okay, through the speaker?
What's that?
I said through the speaker. My question was about can federal and state funds be used to supplant? And my understanding was they couldn't be, but I might be mistaken. So thank you. And that's to anyone on the Finance Committee. Appreciate it.
Delegate Frisell?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The information we received from both the commission staff and from the administration was that first of all, they take those revenues into account if the grants have been awarded by the time of the budget being put into place. But if they come in subsequent to budget, the awards come in subsequently, it can reduce the cost of the operations they were planning. So it creates a surplus in that budget. And when we see year to year, and this is, if you look at the budget books, we're usually spending less than we budgeted. And part of that is attributable to the fact that we receive these grant funds. So that's the information we were given. I don't know whether that's inconsistent with your prior understanding, but that's the information that we've been given from both the commission and from the administration.
Thank you. Delegate O'Malley?
This question probably might have best have been asked during our Finance Committee meeting, but clearly with this report, this is an impressive compilation of the discussions, and I'm really struck by what a good overview of this issue has been produced here, and I think we have the clerk to thank for a lot of that. Let me ask, though, we have some recommendations that we felt as we were meeting. Do we plan to meet specifically with the finance staff or to put these in any more formal way, these recommendations about how grants are handled in budgeting? I mean, would it be appropriate to sort of take this to the next step?
It's a good question. We'll have to go through the Finance Committee and through the clerk to find out if we can, how we can do that if it's necessary.
Yeah.
Delegate Frisell?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think we should go through their process, and this is, I know, a draft, so we first have to finalize the report, send it over to them. But some of these recommendations, you might recall, we did discuss at the time of our last meeting, and it's my recall, that Administrator Dutton said that he thought it was advisable that they do two things. I mean, one would be to give us more information, not sure of the form of that information yet, but some information when the budget is produced as to how much is grant funded. And then also giving us information post the fiscal year of how much of the budget was not expended because of grants. So there'd be some tracking of that information, as well as tracking of those few situations so far where someone is then retained, as we heard today from the lab, for example, is retained post termination of the grant. So I think we had a conversation with the administration about it. I don't think these recommendations are going to hit them out of thin, out of the blue, frankly.
Thank you. Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Quick question. The commission says fringe benefits costs charged to grants as a percentage of direct labor each year. So that includes OPEB and everything that lasts forever.
When we met with the commission, the Cape Cod Commission, I'm sure you're asking about, they said that they number one, did not ever hire anybody. And once they got the grant, the grant was totally inclusive of all costs, including OPEB. That was their statement to us.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm looking here. I thought OPEC was one of the things, frankly, that at least on the government side, the regional government side, did not get included in the grant. So I think we undertake some potential. They couldn't give us a number for this, but if there is some tail, if you will, that would be potentially a tail, but they didn't have a quantification of what that was. So I think there is some potential there, along with like unemployment, if they're in retirement. If people qualify, it gave us the impression we didn't have really many, if any, who fit that, but that it could be potentially a liability.
So there's a potential liability
Yeah.
that is not identified
Right.
as such because it has not occurred.
Yeah, I think that's a story. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions on the grant information? Well, thank you very much to the Finance Committee, and let's see. The Assembly will now convene. And I recognize Delegate Harder as Chair of the Standing Committee on Economic Affairs to review the report from the October 8th meeting.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm going to read the beginning of the report and then go into detail. The Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Economic Affairs met Wednesday, October 8th, 2025 at 4 o'clock. The committee reviewed the first draft of a proposed home rule petition to establish a real estate transfer fee and discussed key policy considerations. Discussion focused on the opt-in structure, the fee amount, and the need for clear guidance while maintaining flexibility for towns to determine how funds are used. The draft envisions that participating towns would retain 90% of revenue for local housing purposes, with 10% directed to the county for administration and regional housing initiatives. Members discussed possible uses of funds, including housing-related infrastructure and potential revolving loan programs, as well as whether towns should have discretion to include commercial property sales. The committee agreed that the legislation should balance specificity and flexibility with local control over participation rates and thresholds above a $1 million minimum exemption. Members also emphasized the need for realistic revenue expectations based on current housing market conditions. So we have sent you a first draft and a draft of the summary. And I think rather than my talking, I should answer questions from anyone. And also, let my committee members speak if I missed something or was unclear about something.
Are there any questions for Delegate Harder regarding this report? Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have several, but I'll just start off with this one. First of all, just to clarify, there is no draft of a petition to the legislature. There is a memo and there's a summary of the memo. Is that what we're dealing with? I just want to make sure I didn't miss a document somewhere.
Yes, what I mean by draft is the first thing we've ever put in writing.
Okay, thank you. Which was excellent. Thank you. It's a good start for us to have a discussion. But I want to clarify something because I'm confused and hopefully someone on the committee has an answer for this. So we have two things. We have a petition to the legislature and we have an ordinance. So the first step would be, and it's kind of surprising the way to read this, but we petition the legislature and we don't need the commissioners for that. We can do that ourselves. We don't need commissioner vote. So we petition the legislature. From my understanding, the legislature takes that, and we've been told this in the hearings we've had in the discussion with our delegation, that once it gets in their hands, then they then manipulate it in the way that they want to see it. And then if it's approved by the legislature, it comes back to us. Okay, fine. So it could come back to us very differently than how we present it to them. Then in order to implement it, and this is my next question, to me, it's a gating issue. Do we need an ordinance? If it comes back to us and it's in a form that we're not as happy as we thought we might be when we sent it to them, we simply don't pass an ordinance. And so it goes nowhere unless we pass an ordinance. So my first question, gating issue, what's the connection between the ordinance and what we get back from Beacon Hill, assuming we do get something back from Beacon Hill?
I recognize Delegate Gessen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and congratulations. Delegate Frizzell, I think, it's laid out somewhat in the memo, but really, like any other layering of government, right? Like legislature is most likely going to be able to pass the home rule petition and authorize the county to do something. And then it's going to be on the assembly to exercise that power, which we do through ordinance. So largely whether it's, dispersing money or creating a fund or whatever else is going to be necessary for the county to perform as a result of the home rule petition getting approved, it's going to have to be executed by authorization of the assembly. However, there could be components of the home rule petition that are self-executing, more or less. And the reason I bring those up, that would be most likely, things that have to do with municipal approval, right? Like you might, depending on what kind of home rule petition we send up, and depending on what kind of response we get back in the final form from the legislature, there could be components that municipalities can implement on their own without county, without a middle step where the county passed an ordinance to allow municipalities to implement it. But any part of it that would make the county do something or give the county authority to do something, that would all have to be implemented through ordinance. Is that clear?
I think if I understand you, that it's a mixed bag. They can send something back to us that is what we have no further control over. It just implements. So we've triggered them to do something that then is out of our hands after they've done it. On the other hand, there could be things which would require implementation by ordinance. And if it does, then an ordinance comes to us, and assuming we pass it, it could be failed to get 2 votes of commissioners. It could come back to us, and then we'd have to go pass it by 2/3. So I'm just trying to understand how this whole thing could play out in time. But there could be a situation, let's just say, that we send them a petition that says we want local control. They send back a petition that says it's going to be regional. It's going to operate just like the water sewer fund, where it's a total regional application. So that comes back to us. That would, I would assume, require that this body implement it by an ordinance and wouldn't be self-executing if that were the way at which it came back to us. You disagree with anything I just said? Did I get anything wrong?
May I respond, Madam Speaker?
Deputy Speaker, yes, please.
Yeah, I think you've covered it well. I would also emphasize that I think even with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, the legislature took care to make sure that there's still a provision there that tenants can opt out if they want to opt out. And that's generally something you see that happens whenever legislation's passed at a home rule level at the state, is they want to create something with guardrails that provides municipalities and counties with the authority to do something, but very rarely the mandate to you must do this. So I would anticipate, as I said, depending on the balance that's struck between local control and county authority, there's going to be, some uncertainty, something that we'll propose and we could hear back on, to what extent, does Falmouth get to implement, adopt, and shape this policy? And to what extent does the county get to implement, shape, adopt the policy? I think the memo really laid out a lot of this to be on the municipalities already. Like, that's our ask. I don't think there's going to necessarily be pushback from what we heard from our legislative delegation. They said their first option and their first choice would always be local control, period. And then this county proposal is a secondary alternative to them. But I think, the question is going to be who's implementing it, the towns or the county. I think it's going to be on us to, make our pitch that we want the balance that we want. But in the end, I highly doubt that the legislature would come in and say, you have to do it, X, Y, Z. It would be, to whichever entity to actually go ahead and create ordinances or on the town level bylaws to, finally administer the process.
Before we take Delegate Frederickson, Michaela, our delegate, Wyman Colombo had her hand up for quite a while and it finally put down, but would you please go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a lot of questions, and as you know, a lot of these questions have to do with environmental guardrails, deed restrictions. But I think my most pressing question tonight is, are we going to have sufficient time for town managers to be able to react to this? Are they going to be invited and have the opportunity to give their comment? And also, will select boards have the opportunity to provide their comments before we move forward? I worry about something being rushed so that we don't have sufficient information from all the stakeholders on Cape Cod, and certainly town managers and select boards would be good people to involve in this process. My environmental questions, I will wait till later. Thank you.
To answer that question, I think that at the very first meeting of the drafting group, there was a lot of substantial time spent on what objections were within the delegation to and for and against, and what were the objections based on where we were at that point. And it was very clear to the group that the biggest issue at that time was the speed at which this was being done. And so at that meeting, we decided that we would discard I guess the guidelines that had been put out beforehand, and we would work it through so that the appropriate persons in each community got to weigh in, and that there could be more of a consensus from the delegation and feedback from them that may improve what is trying to be accomplished, and to make a more substantial kind of proposal that has a chance of doing something good for the communities. So I hope that that answers your question, and that definitely has been altered. The other thing I wanted to point out as a result of that meeting is we weren't quite sure that we were ready to send out anything yet about the way that it was laid out. But it was at that meeting, based on conversations that had been had and some advance work that Deputy Director Gessen had done, that we looked at what we had in line, made some adjustments, and decided we wanted to get that out immediately, which is why you received that before this meeting. And the reason for that was because we recognize this is a question that affects the entire region. Not only the region, but also the municipalities, each with their own unique issues together. And in looking at it, we want to be sure that everybody has had a voice, that we have listened and addressed all of the various issues that have been brought up, and that we then look at what will probably be a multi-numbered draft down the road that looks a little more like things that is more comfortable for people to vote on. So I hope that, and I appreciate your asking that question, Delegate Wyman-Colombo, because I think it's an important issue right now that I want everybody to understand that has been decided is not in play at the moment. Does that make sense?
Madam Speaker, if I may,
Yes.
I was remiss in not congratulating you on becoming Speaker tonight. Congratulations, and we're happy to have you, and fortunate to have you. I have one other request, and that would be, as we're talking about involving town managers and select boards in towns throughout Barnstable County, I would also like to highly recommend that we involve APCC, so that we ensure that we protect the environment of Cape Cod as we build. We could do two things at once, and I think that's really important, so we don't repeat mistakes of the past. I would also like to include the Chamber of Commerce to talk more about residential deed restrictions. That seems critical to me, and I would appreciate their input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delegate Harder and Delegate Gessen, is that something that can be factored into the way we might set this up?
I have no problem with that, Madam Speaker. That's the whole purpose of today, as far as I'm concerned, is finding out what we need to investigate next. What you've heard from your towns, what you want to know. Any groups you think might be of help. That's why we're here. There is no schedule. There is no, we're going to do this by Tuesday or else. This is now being done mainly through the Economic Affairs Committee, because it's easier to get people in a room and really go into things when there's 5, not 15, but you're all always welcome. But this is what today is about and continues to be about. You can always email myself, Dan, our new lovely speaker, because that's what we're doing now. The way this is being run now is I want questions. We want questions. We want suggestions. We want as much involvement as you can give us. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker, did you have anything to add?
I think Chair Harder hit it on the head.
Thank you. Delegate, oh, sorry. Now we're back. Thank you. Delegate Frederickson.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that you're slowing this down a little bit, because the reality is we want to petition the legislator to take money from somebody to pay for something else. That's important. That should be the last thing we do. I know we had this working group, but the first thing that came to us was this. I'm not sure that it's really the right path, but that being said, this can be supported if we absolutely demonstrate that it's going to help our communities in a way that it's going to make everything better. So we got to be careful of what we do, take our time with it, because I think there can be some common ground found, but we really have to take our time and look at everything. And the legislature can do what they want once they get to it. It's that simple. To answer your question, they can do what they want. It can come back completely different, and it will be law. It won't be, here's what we suggest. So just remember that. So we got to be very careful. That's why I think our legislators, before we send anything up to them, we get them back in the room with us, so they have a clear understanding of what we want, what we expect. I think that is reasonable. Because I go back to the very basics. I question whether, we're submitting something from the county on behalf of our towns, and we haven't really got feedback from them yet on what we're actually doing. So I appreciate the fact that once we get this done closer to something that's manageable, we have to get it from, I already talked to some of my town officials. They're absolutely not going to do anything or support this until they see what the package is. And then maybe there's some adjustments. So, and I appreciate that, because if we're going to do this, I want this to be the best. I want it to be able to look at what did Cape Cod do? What did Barnstable County do to help with this issue? And then I can stand up and say that, because trust me, it's against my nature to add taxes. But if that's the case where we can say we're doing something to make this community better, then I can support it. I'll go back and support it with anybody I can.
Thank you very much, Delegate Frederickson. Delegate O'Malley.
And I would just point out to Delegate Frederickson that the impetus for our taking this up is the fact that our two adjacent counties and a number of the communities in Barnstable County have initiated this process, and it has gone nowhere. So in a sense, I don't think in any way we came up with this out of thin air. I think what we're trying to do is pick up a ball that they are trying to get moving and have not had success. We hope to put our weight, our presence behind it. Is how I see what we're doing.
Delegate Killian, and then we'll come back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the frustration I sense is we do believe the cart may be a bit before the horse. I think the question is, we want to raise a lot of money. That's what this tax is supposed to do. My calculation, anywhere from 30 to 60 million it could generate annually. The question is, how do we spend it? And I think that's what I would like to know. And I think we have not spent nearly enough time figuring out how we're going to address the problems that exist. I'm thinking about what's gone on over the last, few decades. And the irony is we've become victims of our own success. If you remember back in 2010, we spent $40 million investing in a internet superhighway. And the goal of it at the time was to bring business here, bring economic development here to the county. And although that particular project didn't work out too well, the reality is we did get the broadband expansion here, and it brought in thousands of remote workers. And those are the people that began competing with the locals for the real estate. Those people could afford to pay higher prices for real estate because they had the higher salaries than the local people did. That's just one of the elements that has befallen us. But again, we asked for it. We spent money to get that, and this is a result of it. Furthermore, I remember, not decades ago when the Cape was full of seasonal rentals. People were able to find a place to live from September to May. And it just seems like those have disappeared. And maybe we need to find a way to tap into that. I suspect the number of homes that are empty in the wintertime is staggering. And I think we need to find a way to make that work. The point of it is, this is a problem that has many different solutions. And I just don't think we've looked at all of them. And I think we need to spend time now. We need to break this problem up into smaller pieces. We have several committees here. We have a lot of people that are interested, and begin to dig into the numbers and perhaps come up with some very practical solutions, and then figure out what it's going to cost and how the revenue can be best deployed for these solutions. I've heard many people say we can't build our way out of this, and that is 100% true. But the goal here is to come up with smart solutions, reasonable solutions that don't cost millions and millions of dollars, yet accomplish the goal of creating affordable and reasonable housing for people. Because we all know there's no more land left to speak of, so we have to find ways to make this work. But it all starts with identifying the problem and identifying real-world solutions and coming up with a way to pay for it. Maybe there are other revenue sources. I've looked at the short-term rental tax that we have, and we can all agree that short-term rentals have had an impact on housing. And I believe that group should be accountable for the problems that it created here. It should be part of that solution. So I'm certainly willing to look at it from my committee as technology, how it has impacted and how we can, maybe use that edge to help us. But clearly, we have a lot more work to do. And I've heard from other delegates that they don't want this train to fall off the tracks, and I can understand that. So we should put a time limit on it, say we're going to give ourselves, 90 days or 6 months, whatever it is. We know that the work on Beacon Hill has begun. I believe the delegation have filed bills within the House and the Senate. So that avenue is going to continue forward. But as the other part of this being expressed, we don't know if what we ask for is that are going to come to fruition. We don't know what we're going to end up with, so we have to be careful with that. But I do believe if we spend the time and we look at the problem, we come up with real solutions, and if we can demonstrate that we have looked at this and we understand it, I think we'll get more flexibility and more seriousness from the legislature to let us solve this problem on our own.
Thank you. Delegate Friesel.
Thank you, by default.
Well,
So I appreciate those comments from Elliot Killian. Here's the tension that I see about this. If we are here now in the region, trying to find the quote solutions or what will solve the problem, what the cause of the problem is, the nature of the problem is, et cetera, we run into the local control situation. I mean, I heard from my own select board, my own housing people, and I heard it from others who've come before us, heard it at the Economic Affairs Committee, heard it at the Assembly. What you hear, very, very strong theme is, we know what the problems are in our community. We know what the solutions are in our community. What we don't have is sufficient funds to solve this problem. So if we try to come up with, quote, this is what you're going to use the money for, we're going to raise it at the region and we're going to spend it at the region, I don't know if that's going to go over well with our 15 communities. So the tension I see is that the communities believe that they know their communities best. They've been at this for years. This isn't something new. They've been at it for years. They have a toolbox. There's no one thing. They have a toolbox with different tools and how they attack this problem. And what they say to us is the major thing they're lacking is money. And so I don't know how to reconcile your suggestion with that very strong, I really mean it strong, because I know when I went to my select board, they said, if this is a regional thing, we're opposed, period. End of story. Full stop. We know best. If you give us the money to spend, fine. In fact, they even said, how much is the county going to keep? And if the county number is too high, we're opposed, period. Full stop. And I heard that from other communities that were testifying. So there's the tension. And I don't know how you reconcile those two things, if we can reconcile them.
I see that Deputy Speaker Gessen was hand up first, and then we'll go to Delegate Harder, Chairman Harder.
No, I just want to thank Delegate Friesel and Delegate Killian for both your comments. I think you more or less encapsulate the local over regional tension very astutely that we're having in these conversations. And I think I, for one, definitely entered this conversation when we first got the recommendation from the working group with a very regional mindset to this of like, this is an opportunity to pool resources together, execute things regionally, and see, significant regional impact if you do it in that manner. But over the last couple months, I, for one, have heard an earful from a lot of folks in the communities, and correctly so. I think we've all had very similar conversations, specifically on this local control question. Our communities have been either pushing these home rule petitions or have been working to address the housing crisis for years and years. We know what we want to do. What we need is a source of revenue. And if the county is stepping up to try to help us get a source of revenue, then great. But if the county is stepping up to try to usurp the efforts that we've been doing, they're not going to be as amenable. On the flip side, though, I think, especially if we look at the regional shared services office as a regional example, and a number of other things, is if there is a genuine new source of revenue for our communities to address housing, and if our individual communities are able to tap into this to flexibly, fund deed restrictions and have municipal programs that make sense for their town, but they also have flexibility on how to use the revenue. Nothing to say that regional initiatives won't be more efficient than local initiatives. And, I think the regional shared service office is a great example where towns voluntarily, 13 out of 15 communities opted in to pool their money together because it makes more sense to do SHI inventories and other tasks regionally than it does for every town to hire an employee. I think if Falmouth, if Chatham, if Poundstown, if all the communities that currently requested home rule petition decide to adopt a local option home rule, and if more communities join it and they have money to spend on housing, then it's totally fair game for the county to come up with creative regional solutions that are more efficient regionally than they are locally. And towns are going to opt in because it makes financial sense for them to do it. So I don't think it's one or the other. And I don't think there's even a need to mandate for communities that the money has to be spent regionally, because, when it comes to a good landlord incentive, or when it comes to a comprehensive deed restriction program, a lot of that can be run regionally, and towns will want to opt in, I believe, if it's actually more efficient and genuinely more efficient to do it that way. So I don't really think these issues are a conflict. And I agree with Doug and Killian that, it's not enough to just move forward with the transfer fee. We have to really look at what do we have to offer as the county to address this issue beyond just revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Billy
Madam
gets
Speaker.
harder.
No, you're both right. And therein lies the issue. But I've been beating my head against the wall about housing for I don't know how long. There is no one solution. There are no 10 solutions. There are 172 plus, each one a little bit. And each town knows pretty much what can work for them. They know how much capital A affordable they need in order so that they won't be forced to accept 40Bs, all those sort of things. What towns can't do is attainable. And that to me is the biggest crisis. The people that we want to keep here, that make money, but they don't make enough to buy a house. They don't even make enough to rent. And that will never be funded by the feds, by the state. You don't get grants for that. My wish would be that the towns use this money for attainable, but I don't get a say in that because we're giving the towns local control. But there are housing initiatives that would greatly help the towns whether attainable, affordable, whatever, market rate, that need funding. And funding that doesn't come from anywhere else. And in terms of what the money could be used for, is ask your town, please go to your town and say, if you had this money, what would you want to do with it? And then we'll know what we want to spend the money on. I mean, I can give you a list a mile long. I want deed restrictions. I want buy downs. I want little communities for municipal workers. I want tiny houses for seasonal workers. I want all sorts of things. And all of those need funding. And all of those are being decided by your towns in terms of what would work for them, what wouldn't work for them. I know there are towns that want desperately to outlaw short-term rentals. There are other towns that don't want to entertain that at all because they make a lot of money from their short-term rental tax. So there's no one size fits all. There's no one answer. You're both right that we want to know what the money can be spent on, but that's not ours to decide. We give them limits, I mean, to me, the most important thing is you cannot put this money in your general fund, but that's what we're going for, is your towns have ideas. Ask every select board member, housing director, whoever in your town, and say, what's your wish list? That's what we should be spending money on. Thanks.
Thank you, Delegate Harder. Delegate Sampson. Samuel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I appreciate everybody's input and concern and the work that everybody has done, so far. I particularly appreciate the thoroughness of the minutes of our meetings that we had and all of the alternatives that each of the members made, and it's included in there so that you can see how even we were talking about what to do. I think we've gotten so far ahead of ourselves on some of these issues. And what I would really like to see is us get back to work and take what we have, take the comments that have been made, and really lay out a framework. Here's the issue, here are the alternatives, and maybe here's a recommendation. Because what I don't want to see is 15 of us going back to our communities with different questions and different perspectives. In order for us to get a good foundation, we all have to have the exact same information to present to them. They can tell us anything that they want. And then we bring that back and we can mull that around. But until we have that framework, and I know I've told many of you, my town is against it at this point because they don't have any information. So I want to give them information, but I don't want my information to be different than what any other delegate is telling their town.
Excellent point.
I remembered this time. I love that concept. We got to have that. And that's important. And the conversations I have had, it goes back to taking some money for the county 10%. I can tell you right now, overwhelmingly, no, they do not want that to take place. They don't want to set up another form of government within the county. Maybe a little bit to do whatever the costs are related to collecting the money, but 10%, they're absolutely not. And it's looked at, the word was, that's a Trojan horse. Okay, that could lead to many different things. They want local control. So that's just one thing, but I'd love to be able to talk to somebody in the economic group. I have a whole list of questions, and they're just questions, so to satisfy some of them my own, some I've gotten from other people, and they might be valuable for you as you craft up the final, not the final, the recommended paperwork.
It'll get harder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just before I address Delegate Frederickson, the one thing I forgot to say, that the reason I think the county having a certain amount of money, which would be administered like the Clean Water Protection Fund by the towns that are participating. I don't get to choose what we put the money in. The board represented by the towns gets to decide. And the reason I think that it's important for the county to have money, there are some very good options for towns, but they have to wait for town meeting. And the county can, if the county provides the money, we don't have to wait for town meeting. And that might be of big benefit to towns with certain projects that, oh my God, they have to wait another 9 months. So that's just one of my ideas. But so that's my idea about, giving the county some money is it allows for flexibility. It's not a new entity at the county. It's like the Clean Water Protection Board. I always get that name wrong. But it's like that. It will be an independent board using financing that will help the towns involved in deciding the best way to use that money to help them. So it's not going to be, much as I wish, it's not going to be me on a throne saying, I want to do that. It is going to be decided by the towns that are involved. Did that answer your question? No?
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Delegate Sampson.
Thank you. So Frank asked a very important question. And I've heard this thrown out many times. And here's an example of what I would like clarity on when we go back. We talk about the 10% fee going to the county. Well, and it says it in the minutes. And I didn't understand this first either. The clarity is they're only talking about some figure, I think I read 3%, going for the administrative fee of the county. The other 7% is going for county-wide housing projects, such as workforce housing or regional housing. So other options that one town might not be able to accomplish, the county might be able to accomplish. So I think it's important that we say there's an administrative fee, but it might only be 2 or 3%. The rest still goes for housing. I think that's a big difference in how we present it. Thank you.
Good point. So at this, Delegate Killian.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to respond to Delegate Frizel's comments in that I agree with you 100%. I didn't want to suggest that I'm advocating that the county solution is the solution. I think what we will find out through this process, what is the best solution? And I can almost guarantee that every town, certainly mine, would be much more amenable to them getting the funds directly rather than through the county. And I think that's probably true of most towns here. But I think we should find that out. And I think they can, as you pointed out, they've been in this business for a while. They understand the problems, I think, better than this group does. And I think by reaching out to them, we can probably glean a significant amount of information, which will point us in the right direction. But that's what I'm suggesting we're going to be doing over the next several months to come up with a better solution or solutions.
Yes, Delegate Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I think to move this along and the hour is getting late, I like the suggestion made by Delegate Sampson. Maybe the next step is for the drafting group combined with the Economic Affairs Committee. The way you've put together this memo and summary to do the same thing on a framework, as you mentioned, with, you know, the issue, whatever it is, potentially if people can reach consensus on a recommendation. But I think coming back to the assembly with something like that would be helpful for us to keep advancing this. I think we're quite a ways away from coming to a vote on anything yet to send to Beacon Hill. And also, I think then we could contribute, members here perhaps can contribute what other issues that have not yet been focused on that ought to be focused on as part of this consideration. Doesn't mean it gets into the actual petition that gets out there. For example, whether we should have a sunset on this tax, whether this tax is perpetual once and always and will never go away, or whether towns have a way to remove themselves after a period of years from the continued imposition of the tax. So there are some other, and also like, is it approved by the town meeting, or does it, like CPC, community preservation? That went to ballot vote before a town was adopting CPC. It wasn't done by the town legislature. It was done by the voters of the communities. Would that be something that could possibly make this a more popular option? So there are some other issues to perhaps weigh along with the ones you've already weighed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So my question, I believe, is for Clerk Fletcher, because I'm not sure about open meeting law violations. Can we just mail out, drafts as we, come up with them, get opinions, keep working on it, and then present them at a meeting? Or do they all have to be discussed? Does it all have to be discussed in public? And if Delegate Frederickson said he has many questions that he'd like to have answered, does that have to be in public, or can I meet him for coffee? Thank you.
There's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. You're fine as long as you don't have 8 members who represent a majority of the county's population. However, the spirit of the law is the more that you can do in public, the better. Myself and Assistant Clerk Dvorak, it's probably safer to just send things to us, because that way you don't have to worry about tripping it by accident. And then I can work with Speaker Warner and Deputy Speaker Kessin and Dean Oman and whoever committee chairs to figure out the best way to do it without inadvertently tripping any sort of issue. Those of you can remember training about this with council, there's chain and serial ways to break that law as well. And so you're probably safer sending it to us and having us collectively figure that out. So that would be my suggestion as staff. But the other thing I wanted to point out, at the risk of editorializing, is people care about this a lot. There's a lot of money at stake, and there are maybe more eyes on this than are generally on some other county business. So I think we all want to be very careful that we don't even create the appearance that things are being done behind closed doors, rather out in public.
So we'll move on from this subject now?
We did 13. Then.
Huh?
That was 13. We did that. It looks like.
Okay. Do we have any new business?
I can do it. I did receive there's a resolution that's sponsored by the deputy speaker and the assistant. Too many title changes and the assembly dean about who presides in the absence or unavailability of both the speaker and the deputy speaker. So I have copies, and I will email it to the people who are online, but it's not rocket science. So we can.
It's technical, but important.
Excuse me, are you passed out? or-
It should be coming around. Sorry.
Madam Speaker, may I? Just for the General Assembly, with the ascension of Speaker Warner, we have an opening on finance and we have an opening on economic affairs that we should be dealing with. So I would hope that everyone would consider their application to appear to the speaker to join that committee. They're very pressing committees right now, both of them. And with her ascension to the throne, we need two new members on that. That can be alternates, they can be new people. There's going to be new people anyway. So consider your thought process on that, please.
Can I guess, raise a point of order here? Just to clarify something. So the speaker cannot be a member of any committee?
I'll defer to the parliamentarian.
That's been our custom, that the speaker is only a member of what used to be the Governmental Rights Committee, but is now what is it called now? The Governmental Affairs and Rules Committee, and isn't a member of any of the actual standing committees. So it's generally how we do things here.
Delegate Killian.
Just a question, John and I submitted an ordinance a few weeks ago, if that's going to make it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes.
We published the notice for that in the newspaper for a public hearing on November 5th and are planning a meeting of the governmental affairs and rules probably for next week to talk about it. Part of the reason it lagged a little bit is to give the administration a chance to weigh in, and the administrator is not here right now. And so the plan is to have a remote meeting next Wednesday, and then to schedule at least the public hearing for the business meeting, or for the business calendar on November 5th. Subject to having a new speaker to go over the business calendar, of course.
Okay. We have any other questions? No?
Is it appropriate for me to ask a question about, about this resolution?
Generally, no, because it's not listed for, it's being introduced tonight for discussion at probably the Assembly Governmental Affairs and Rules Committee, and as well the next meeting, so.
Second.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen.
Yeah.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley. Yes. Assembly Dean Omen.
Yeah.
Chatham seat is vacant. Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
Delegate Ty. Delegate Warner, or Speaker Warner. Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, that's everybody.